Hello everyone and welcome to my hobby home. My name is Cathy. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am doing a finishing Friday. I finally have my little bee quilt here on my table and I am attaching the binding. So we are binding today. I kind of already got started on this because I'm doing a lot of videos today trying to get ready for the weekend. And so I had already started on this before my camera was ready for me to record again. But what I'm doing is just doing a simple binding on this. I'm using a 2.5 inch. Trying to find where my little thing is right there to put my needle down on it. But I'm using a 2.5 inch sewing at 1/4 inch regular binding, no flange, nothing frilly or fancy. I am using the same color fabric or the exact same fabric as my binding as I used for my backing. I actually thought I was going to do a self-binding quilt, but I did not have enough backing in some areas to do a self-binding quilt. So I did have some fabric left and I was able to cut 2.5 inch strips. Now I do all of my binding on the machine, but anyway, back to the 2.5 inch strips. I just took the fabric that I did have left and cut it all into 2.5 inch strips, calculated how much I would need, and pulled that number of strips out and sewed them together. Now, the other strips, I still have them. What I will do is I will store them as jelly roll strips, and that way I can use them for binding on another project if necessary, if I need to. I can use them for a jelly roll quilt, anything like that that I may need some black and white fabric for. You know, I may even be able to cut 2.5 inch squares out of it if I need to. But I like, if I have a big piece of fabric like that, and this is not a fabric that I think I would use a lot, because it is just black and white fabric. I honestly don't even know where I purchased this fabric. It could have been purchased at a quilt shop. It could have been purchased at like Hobby Lobby. I could have gotten it online in a shopping haul in one of my de-stash groups I'm in on Facebook. I don't remember where I got the fabric. And I think it goes great with my bee quilt though. So I actually probably got it at Hobby Lobby, because I know I got my bee jelly roll. I got it somewhere online. It was a shop. I got it from a shop online. I can't remember if it was Fat Quarter Shop or somewhere like that, but I know I got it online. And this is the second quilt. This, I did make a quilt, a baby quilt, out of the 2 from 1 jelly roll book. And that one, you know, like I said, I've already had one made, and this is my second one. And what I did, I just kind of threw it together, did something. This was not a pattern. It was just something I did. Nothing, you know, I have 2 grandbabies, so it, you know, it's... You never can have too many baby quilts when it comes to having babies in the house. So how I do my binding. I sew it 1/4 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch from the edge here. And once I get to that 1/4 of an inch from the edge, I will then sew off that corner. And when I do that, I can fold my binding straight up here. I want this to be a straight line. And then I fold it back down. And I want to have a straight line across the top here. And it's all going to match up real well there. Now, I will clip my binding here. This helps you have a beautiful mitered corner. Now, I will clip before the corner, and I will clip right here after the corner. And what I will do, I will feel where that bend is in my fabric, and I will put my needle down right in that bend, 1/4 of an inch, and I just find that bend, 1/4 of an inch from the edge and inside the bend. And my machine automatically, when you start start sewing, once your thread has been cut, it automatically does a back stitch. I have that in my settings, and I do that. And y'all will probably tell I've got my cut here. I cut it 1/4 of an inch of batting away from the edge of my quilt, and that's just to pull the binding, you know, a little further up. Some people tell me, well, just do like a 3/8 instead of a 1/4 seam. And I would just rather give it a little extra, you know, batting out there to come around, because you want your binding to be real soft. And I'm just continuing to go on that 1/4 of an inch here. I hope I have enough. I think I did calculate it correctly. I feel pretty certain I did. But if not, I got more strips over there. And yeah, I think this is beautiful. This would be something I can put in my chair. My cats even love it. I can put it in my chair, so when my grandbaby comes, I can put it in my lap and wrap my grandbaby up in it. I know my little grandbaby girl, she probably gonna love it. Although right now her favorite color, I think, is pink and unicorns. So, and she's just a year old, but I think her favorite color is pink and unicorns. She's so precious. I miss her so much. And God, I was going to tell y'all, I did not realize that I had gotten so much done this year alone. I was looking at like quilts that I've done. Now, the tops that are done, maybe not yet quilted or not yet bound, but tops that I have done. I have done 12 quilts this year alone. Now, I think last year I didn't start sewing quilts until June. I think I might have gotten like 5 last year, maybe. Let's see. I know my granddaughter, my grandson, a friend's baby. Then my Brave quilt. No, I got 4 done then. I might have gotten another one done and I just don't remember it. Rolling this up here. I really wish I had an extender on my table back there so I could throw my quilt on it, but I have to fold it up and just do with what I got. because this is the easiest way for binding that I have ever found. And also how I connect my binding here. You'll see, let me show you right here at the beginning. And I know they're not different. Okay, you'll see right here is one side. And I do it about 12 inches from the end. I have my strip here and I start sewing it. And I'll show you when I get there how I connect it. I saw this in a YouTube video and I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing to know. And I don't even remember whose video I saw it on how to attach it. Because if I could remember, I'd give them credit for it because it was not my idea. But I tell you what, it sure does make attaching that binding come out perfect. And I know I've shown y'all before how I do it, but who don't mind seeing it again? Or we may have somebody new that's never seen it. And I'm just showing you what works for me. This is not the Holy Grail or anything. This is just what works for me. It may work for you. You may decide to try it and see if it works. And it really takes the math out of everything for you when it comes to attaching that binding. Like I said, I really hope I have enough because I didn't take into consideration where I attached the strips. So that may make a difference. I was hoping that there would be, because I only needed like 128 inches. So I thought, well, 4 strips would give me 160. But I didn't take off any of the selvage. I didn't. Well, you know, I figured 40 inches. And I actually think it was a little bit wider, you know, the width of fabric. I think it was a little wider than 40, like 41 or 42. But I only calculated it at 40 inches. So I guess I did calculate it for selvage. And y'all may be wondering why I don't have a walking foot on here with this. Bernina's have this foot back here on the back. I think it's called a dual control feed foot or something like that. It keeps it feeds from the underneath. And no, this has the top foot. It has a foot that goes under your presser foot that has grips on it like your bottom foot. You know, your feet under there. So unless you have something really, really thick, I think this should work. Now, I have used this with Minky, and it worked really well with Minky. And if you have ever worked with Minky, you know you have to have a walking foot with Minky, or it stretches it all out of whack. Because I've done something with Minky on a different sewing machine with a walking foot, and then I've done one on this machine with just the dual control foot, and the dual control foot was by far superior to the walking foot. And y'all, this feels so good to be getting something completely done. That is my goal. Well, my goal for 2024 is to smash my stash. And I'm doing that. Everything that I have used recently actually has been, well, if I purchased something, I might have needed that to finish a project or to finish with getting all the fabrics for a project. Okay, I'm down to my last side, so I'm going to go ahead and do this corner. But smashing my stash is a goal. Now, you will still be seeing me purchasing, because here recently I purchased a Lori Holt Mercantile bundle. But that is because I had a viewer send me all of, I think they were called quilt seeds. And the quilt seeds are done in the Lori Holt Mercantile line. Well, I like the way it came out with that line, so I'm one of these that I don't have to have it all different, that I can do it in the same line that is on the photo, because that's normally what draws me to a pattern anyway, is if I like the colors of it. You know, the colors that it's done in. Because sometimes I have a hard time, you know, coordinating colors with a pattern. But if I find a pattern that I really like the colors on, and I really like the pattern, now I may be able to use a different line, but still use the same colors. Okay, I have to make sure to mark where I want to stop. And that's going to be right here. So I'm going to give it about 6 inches between my two openings. Okay. Now, let me show you what I'm going to do here. I'm cutting the threads. And what I am going to do, I am going to take 2 clips, take my binding here, just find where the end of that one is, and find where the end of this one is. So what we want to do is find about the center, which is going to be, y'all can't really see it, where my finger is. What I'm going to do is put the strip, let me pull this up so you can see it better. I am going to pull the strip to where I think the center is. And I'm just going to clip close to it. It don't have to be right on it. And I'm going to pull the other piece and clip it. Now what I'm doing here is I'm going to fold this piece back, and I'm going to finger press it right there. So that's that piece. And then I'm going to take the other piece and almost match it up. They're not to be touching. Do them about 1/8 of an inch apart. So once I fold that first one back, I'm going to make sure I clamp all of it down. So this second one, I'm going to give it about 1/8 of an inch gap, and I'm going to clip that as well. Now, I have about a hand's width between my 2 clips. That's because I'm going to press these 2 strips right here to give it an indentation in it. Now, I know this is going to be hard to see because it is the same colors. I did not think about that when I was doing this. But what I'm going to do, since those are pressed really good, and there is marks in those, I'm unclipping these, and I'm pulling those to the side, and I'm folding the top so I can clip it and get it out of the way. So what I am doing now is finding my little presses here. We have this strip here that's on top. We're going to make that, I have to think about this, because when you open one way and when you open the other way. Okay, we're going to open this one up and lay it flat. We just open it and lay it flat. So we kind of have an X mark right here where the where we pressed it. And this other one, we open it up and put the right side down on the other one. Now, this is where you need some pans. I use my little Wonder pans because now that we have this X mark in our fabric, we can match the center up. So we're matching our center and we're matching our creases here. And I'm going to pin right on that one. And I will match the next crease down here and pin on it as well. Now I have to make sure this is correct, because when yes, that will be correct. So now that I have it like this, I need to mark it from corner to corner and sew it. I'm just going to tell y'all, sometimes it don't come out right for me. Sometimes I've done it backwards and upside down and everything else, but we're going to try this. I've got to use my little marking tool here. And I'm going to get my tray out of the way so I can lay this flat. And I will have room to mark with, because we have our fabrics laid flat, or we're getting it as flat as we possibly can. And I'm laying my marking ruler on both, where both of the corners come together. And a way to know that you're good is your center. You should mark directly over the center of your binding. Now let's hope that I'm in the right location and that I'm not doing it backwards. Sometimes that happens, but if it does, I just take it out and do it again. It's not a big deal. It's a little setback, but I do not cut. I never cut until I am done sewing and I've tested it and I've turned it to make sure it is correct, because sometimes it is possible to get off kilter a bit. And I'm going to release a few stitches here on this just to help me loosen that up so I can lay it flat. And I know y'all can't see a thing I'm doing under here. Okay, so now we have our fabrics laid flat. We're just getting it under, and we're putting our needle right into that line. I mark it just because that is so much easier for me to manage a mark. And I think I got a little off crooked there. Let's see if that's going to work. If it doesn't, we can still fix it. Okay, let's take the clip off and let's make sure that we have it going correctly. Okay, it does fold over correctly. Now let's see if it's the right length. It is the right length. No puckering or anything right there when I hold it straight. There's no puckering. Oh, you got a piece there in the way that you couldn't see. So what I'm going to do now is take my cutter and cut the excess off over here. And what I do is I just lay my trimming tool down on top of the seam, the center line on top of the seam. Take my rotary cutter and cut it off. I'm at an angle, so it's kind of hard to get that to go. Sometimes I press the seam, sometimes I do not. Let's see if I need to press it with this or not. It doesn't look like I really need to, because it does seem like it's laying pretty flat, but I could and I will. So now I have that pressed, and once it's bound, you'll never even know which one was the last one that really wasn't pressed. But I will come back up here where I had taken out a few stitches, and I'll go back just a little bit before the last stitch. And yeah, that's my little shortcut that I have for doing a binding. And ever since I learned how to do that, my bindings, the hardest part is making sure I put them together the correct direction. because it's very easy to get that upside down mixed up. But once you learn how to do that, it is wonderful. And I also, now I am attached there. I also watched a YouTube video that talks about how to not have the thickness on the corner. And it talks about if your corner is going one way on the back, have it going the other way on the front. So that's a good suggestion. I've never tried it, but I think I'm going to try it on this one. So what I'm going to do, I may actually clip this. I don't mind that it has a large bind on it. And the reason I don't mind that is because this is going to be a child's quilt, a play quilt. It may even go out of town with me this weekend. I don't mind clipping. I don't mind pinning. To me, it just helps ensure that you've got everything caught and covered, you know, in your stitching. When you're doing your binding, you just want to make sure it's caught real well. Like right here, I have an area that my quilt top is not as wide as the rest of it. So I just want to make sure that I'm catching the edge of that quilt top right there. Your binding can hide all kinds of stuff, y'all. Just gonna say it, it can hide all kinds of stuff. So here I have my corner. I'm down to my corner. I'm going to go ahead and finish clipping all the way down to my corner. And what I'm feeling for is make sure I don't have anything rolling up in that binding. I'm probably just going to do one side, you know, clip one side so y'all can see it. So I always clip right here on the end. I put a lot of clips on the corners, really, just to hold it in place and make sure it doesn't slip out. Okay, so I've just got the one side done, which I think will be enough. I'm going to start... Not quite. I'm not going to start at the corner. I'm going to start, you know, just about probably 6 inches away from the corner. And being that I clipped so much, I will have to be taking clips out. Now, be very careful to not roll your binding. I've heard people say that's not a big deal, but it really is. You don't want to quilt with your binding rolled up. I think I may have to change a needle out here. I hear it clicking. Sewing, so that means I must have hit a pin or something. And it's very possible I could have hit a pin because I caught myself earlier not thinking about pulling pins out of another quilt I was on, which y'all will see Sunday. And what I do is I run the edge of my binding right along the inside of my foot. My foot has a 1/4 and an 1/8 marker on it. The outside of the foot is a 1/4. The inside of the foot is 1/8. So I'm running it at 1/8 of an inch to sew my binding in. And what I will do when I get to this corner, I do have a clip in it, but I will hold this one. I'm going to make sure everything's nice and flat. I like to make sure everything's good and tight and flat right there. When I get right onto that corner with my needle, that's when I pivot my quilt. Now I'm going to turn my quilt and make sure that all of my binding is still tight and correct, because right here I see I only clipped a certain distance down here. and it makes it look not real even. So I could go on and start sewing, and that's what I'm doing. I'm going to go ahead and start sewing, and I guess as I go I can roll it up. Now this is normally how I would bind my quilt. I wouldn't clip it. I do like to clip it around the corners though, just to make sure everything kind of stays held in place. But actually just sewing the binding on, I normally don't clip. But it's never a bad idea to clip. I mean, that does hold everything in place for you. And if you don't like a quilt with a really wide binding on the front, you can always do sew it to the front and then hand stitch it down on the back, if that's what you would like to do. The only time I've ever had the bind match on the front and the back is if I did a 3/8 inch seam. Or, yeah, when I sewed it to the back, that's the only time I've ever had it come out the same on the front and the back. But I did this one on 1/4 inch because you're really not going to be able to tell the difference on the back because it is the same exact fabric. So I went on and did that 1/4 inch and give myself a larger binding on the front. Now we're to another corner here. I'm going to just fold this over and get sewn close as I can to that corner. Now I do have that binding tool, but I have not used. I only used it to cut the ends of my strips. I did not use it to determine how to measure my binding because I feel like the process that I use works well. So why fix it if it's not broke? Because I mean it does work really well. Okay, I'm going to clip right here at this corner, and I'm going to fold this corner in. And I'm using my seam ripper to kind of press into that corner to make sure I have everything in there nice and tight and no ripple, wrinkle, nothing going on in there. And then I will clamp that corner to hold it in place. And then I'm going to fold my binding on over here and then do another clamp just a little further down, just to make sure it don't get pulled loose. Now, are my bindings the same width from one end to the other and all the way across? Probably not. I'm not that good yet, I don't think. They could be, I don't know, but I don't think they are. Okay, now I'm getting close to that corner again, so I will double check with my seam ripper to make sure that corner is very tight. I like to make sure that corner is really, really tight. And what I'll do is once I get my needle in that fabric, I will pivot my quilt. Oops, I think I still got a clip somewhere down here. Yes, that's at the very beginning. So I still have my clip right here on this side of the quilt, and what I'm going to do is just get started coming back down it and take that clip out. Now, for me to bind a small quilt like this is probably easily an hour and a half to do everything, to cut my strips, to press my, if I need to press my strips, to, trim my strips, to sew my strips together. I notice I got a little rolling of the batting up under here. I try not to have that, but sometimes you do. Trying to make sure that seam is flat under there. It's getting a little heavy there on the side, so I just flip it under and get it up on the table. Okay, y'all, I have this completed now, and I'm going to show you how this turns out. You can see how it's a perfect edge there. See my binding. The only thing that you can really tell that it's not is it stitches way down here and the other is way up here. So this is a Finishing Friday finished little baby quilt, y'all. I'm so excited and happy to have this done. This is one more thing off of my table. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you're getting your finishes done. And if you've not yet, please give me a thumbs up. Leave a comment. I do try to respond to each and every comment personally. And as always, until I see you again, I hope you have a very blessed day. Goodbye.